Hello and welcome to Console Tours, taking you to the real-life locations behind your favorite games.
It's time to go to Eterna, and I have some thoughts.
Okay.
I have some thoughts about Eterna.
What are your thoughts on Eterna?
Well, specifically, Eterna is, being one of the larger cities in Sinnoh after Jubilife, it is based on Asahikawa, which is the second largest city in Hokkaido after Sapporo, and is sort of approximately geographically similar in Sinnoh to where Asahikawa is in Hokkaido, though it's incredibly weird to me because I always thought of Asahikawa as like so far north because it took so dang long to get there from where I lived, but like you'd look at it on the map and it wasn't actually all that north, it's much more central. Anyway...
Well, didn't you have to go all the way west first?
Yes, because the Hidaka Mountains were between where I was and my town. Between my town and Asahikawa, there was a huge range of mountains which ended up becoming Mount Coronet in this game, and the passage through those mountains was dicey at best and really only accessible during some parts of the year. Anyway, the reason why I have so many feelings about this Eterna Asahikawa combination is, if I'm reading this correctly, again, I still have never played this game, Eterna is the city of history, right?
Where the city and the future meet, basically.
But it's portrayed, because that's the ancient Pokemon statue,
Yes.
right? And it's kind of portrayed as being like one of the cities that's full of history and tradition in Sinnoh. Whereas, on the other hand, Asahikawa is not that. Asahikawa is one of the most modern locations in Hokkaido. Although it existed previously as an Asahikawa village, it didn't incorporate as a city until just over 100 years ago, in 1922. It then went on to kind of absorb a lot of local other villages in the area and kind of combine them together to become one larger city. It was used as a military settlement, it was used as a base during the Second World War, and then today is Hokkaido's primary location for the JSDF, the Japan Self-Defense Force, which brings up an interesting point if you consider that Eterna is where the evil team is headquartered, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know, necessarily, if they deliberately are referencing the JSDF here, but that is a point to make. They are quartered in Asahikawa. It has got a bit more of a military presence, I would say.
Well, does their base look anything like that?
I haven't been there, so I don't actually know. But it is just an interesting choice that the director of this game made. But yeah, I would not consider Asahikawa to be very steeped in history. I would consider it a very modern town.
I don't think this is actually their base. I think this is one of their...
It's still funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would consider Asahikawa very modern, very... by Hokkaido standards, very urban. When I think about things to do and places to go in Asahikawa, I'm kind of drawn more towards more modern locations. The Asahiyama Zoo is very nice. Asahikawa Ramen Village, which is this really touristy spot where like a bunch of ramen stores got together to sell Asahikawa ramen and also fleece tourists out of their money. It's got a lot of arcades, a lot of shopping malls, the Heiwadori area. It's got a lot of shopping, a lot of good restaurants, but I would just not associate it out of all of Hokkaido as a place with history.
I wonder if part of it might have been taken and put into other areas for pacing.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be so rude to a city, but I don't know anyone in Jet who actively likes Asahikawa. It's kind of glum looking. It's got some of the worst traffic in Hokkaido. It's a lot less convenient to get around than Sapporo due to being very spread out and not having some of the underground malls and underground walking paths that make navigating Sapporo tolerable during the 6 months of snow that we sometimes get, always get. Asahikawa was just kind of a place, like, I went there several times, but I would never go there to do anything. I would go there, like, because there'd be a party, or a meetup, or a bar crawl there with other jets, other foreigners. And again, I'm sure people who lived closer to Asahikawa probably went there a lot more frequently. To me, it was a 6-hour drive when the roads were cooperating, and I don't even want to think about what it was when it wasn't. But I don't see a lot of similarities here between the two towns, with the exception of, geographic location. Oh, this looks more like Asahikawa, a really long road. Oh, yeah.
So this is the cycling road. It goes between Eterna and Orbert. It's basically all downhill. I'm not even holding anything. Yeah,
that reminds me so much of the prefectural highway. Oh my god. Like, and even the little domes and stuff. Yeah, no, that's definitely...
And it goes basically straight down to Orbert, which was... What was it?
Ubody.
Yeah,
Ubody. Yeah, so a big long road. But yeah, just Asahikawa is probably, like, if you're listening to this and you're, from the West, it's probably your perception of a city. It's very modern, it's got a lot of bars and malls and factories. Does Eterna have a gym?
It does, and after I fight this cyclist, who I apparently did not fight, I thought I'd gotten everybody, but this game file is apparently ultra weird, so... give me a split second and we'll just fly back.
No problem. But what type gym does Eterna have?
The grass type gym.
Okay, that I would say is incredibly accurate for Asahikawa, because they are known industry-wise for lumber and logging and wood pulp, paper pulp.
Yes, well then there's something else. After we also look at their gym, there's a location that's not part of a city, but that we should go into, and it's just next to Eterna.
But yeah, that... Asahikawa being the grass-type gym, that is very accurate for what I would associate with the city's industries. But you know what? Now that I'm looking at it more, except for the whole history thing, it is very accurate, because it's a very brown place. And Asahikawa is very brown.
Yeah, so this is the grass gym.
Which reminds me more of, like, the flower patterns we saw in Floroma/Furano.
Yeah, well, you do go plot-wise from Floroma through the forest to here, so...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm also surprised that they didn't use this area for, one of the lakes, because just south of Asahikawa is BA, which has the infamous Blue Pond, which is a lake that is so blue that it's famous for being blue. That could be the Blue Pond.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It might not be, like, one of the lakes, but yeah, this is the first thing you see right before...
Yeah, I would say that is probably a reference to BA Blue Pond. And for those of you who don't believe me that a lake can be famous just for being blue, look it up. It's hecka blue.
Okay, so this is Eterna Forest.
Uh-huh.
And this is what I'm assuming... Is there a large forest near?
I mean, most of the uninhabited area in Hokkaido is some form of large forest, so yes.
Well, then that brings us to the secondary question. Are there any famous haunted mansions?
Specifically haunted mansions, no. But one thing that Hokkaido is really, really famous for, and I was gonna bring this up when we got to... Oh god, I don't know the names of these things. It's really bad. Once we got to Celestic. But one of the things that Hokkaido is super famous for is abandoned locations. There were several times throughout primarily the 20th century when Hokkaido and parts of Hokkaido tried to expand, tried to get bigger, tried to come out with all these, make this cool locations or whatever, but it didn't always necessarily go through. So there are schools, there are hospitals, there are factories and industrial buildings, there are whole towns that are just completely deserted.
Yeah, you told me about the completely deserted theme parks.
Oh, yes. So my personal favorite deserted location, which sadly I never got to go inside. I've driven past it, but I was never there during any of the few times, rarely during the summer, when they will open it up occasionally for tourists to visit. But Anne of Green Gables land. Because big parts of Hokkaido are a sister city with Prince Edward Island in Canada, which is infamously the location of the setting of the Anne of Green Gables book series. So there was a theme park based entirely on Anne of Green Gables with, like, a replica of her house and, like, Canadian food. And in its heyday, they would even hire, like, these 2 Canadian girls to come over for the summer and work in the park as Anne and her best friend Diana. And it is now kind of an infamous... I don't know what it is, because it's not an urban legend, it's real, but it's like... It's this place that people will kind of go just to check off their list and say, yeah, I went to abandoned Anne of Green Gables land. So, I wonder if that's not what that haunted mansion is meant to be.
I mean, is it near,
Yes,
then it
yes,
probably
it's in
is.
this area.
Yeah.
But I think the Haunted Mansion and also the entire concept of Celestic Town are generally a reference to how much abandoned crap there is all over Hokkaido that people have never taken down, that just haven't been demolished, to the point that, like, exploring these abandoned / potentially haunted locations, which is sometimes referred to as, like, scavenging or ruin diving, is a hobby in Hokkaido that especially young people do, especially during the summer and during their vacations. And I was never super big into it myself, but I knew a lot of other Jets who would go to abandoned locations, even ones that were, and Hokkaido government don't come down on me for this, but even ones that were roped off and not meant for public access anymore, and would go around and examine them and bring back souvenirs and pictures and stuff. And of course, every single one would have some rumor or another that they were haunted. So I think that is a nod to the huge kind of abandonment culture that is present in Hokkaido. Either that, or all the weird things that are in Hokkaido. Because Hokkaido isn't... Well, I love it. It doesn't necessarily compare as a tourist location outside of Sapporo to, like, other locations that Japan has. I mean, you're planning a trip to Japan, you're going to Tokyo, you're going to Kyoto, Osaka, maybe down to Kyushu and Nagasaki, but unless you're super into skiing and winter sports, odds are you're probably not going to Hokkaido. I know plenty of people who live in Japan their entire lives and never go to Hokkaido. So, in an attempt to make Hokkaido more appealing to tourists, and I will say probably not necessarily the most successful one, there are a lot of very weird locations and quote-unquote tourist attractions that were built up during the 20th century, and I would say a good chunk of them are located on the drive that I would take between my town and either Furano, Floroma, or Eterna, Asahikawa. Just to give you guys a couple of examples of places that I drove by myself, there was a trick art museum, like an art museum specifically based around optical illusions.
Interesting.
There was a fake Ferris wheel.
How is it fake?
It doesn't run!
Oh, fair.
It's a full Ferris wheel that, is full-sized and looks like it would be totally functional, but it's just a sculpture.
So it's a Ferris wheel.
Oh my god, yes it is. But it's this fake Ferris wheel, utterly in the middle of nowhere. Like, you're driving, and you're out of the mountain range, and central Hokkaido is, like, so flat, and then all of a sudden there's this giant fake Ferris wheel just out of nowhere. There's also, this ski resort, like, kind of luxury ski resort that is these 2 really tall, kind of almost skyscraper height towers that, again, is in the middle of, like, super flat Hokkaido, and it's, like, the one skyscraper in, like, all of non-city Hokkaido. So I like that Sinnoh has these weird locations like that haunted mansion you just showed us. Because, yeah, Hokkaido is also weird and full of weird locations that you wouldn't know existed unless you happen to be driving by them.
Alright. Yeah, no, there's tons of little weird things in this.
That's so accurate. My personal favorite is me and my friend were driving up to Kamikawa, which is, as the name suggests, a little bit south of Asahikawa, to go camping, and just in the middle of nowhere, in a field, was an abandoned bus. Now, that's a big thing. There are tons of abandoned buses in fields in Hokkaido, primarily due to, like, schools and factories and stuff shutting down. But this one had been painted all over, and there was, like, paintings of foxes and trees and flowers and ice cream. Like, this gorgeous mural all on this abandoned bus, just in the middle of a random field in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Game Freak, you now know what to add to the remake if you ever remake.
And it's a Pokestop too, so it should go.
Yeah.
Oh, Hokkaido, for such a deserted kind of spread out location, Hokkaido was actually great for Pokemon Go because there were so many weird landmarks that were obviously Pokestops and got added into Pokestops as soon as the game came out in Japan. So, you know, people would be like, oh, what are you doing? Now, my town kind of sucks because we were on the coast, and this was like back in the days when it wasn't really balanced, so it was just water Pokemon, water Pokemon, water Pokemon. But in terms of like the actual density of Pokestops, Hokkaido was not half bad. Anyway, that's Asahikawa and Eterna and the area around it. Where are we going to now?
We are headed to Celestic.
One thing I just want to say is we'll be making more videos about this, but hey, if you have any questions about living in Hokkaido, about the connections between Sinnoh and Hokkaido, about how the heck did you end up in Hokkaido in the first place, like, hey, reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at derletztentans. I'm on GameLuster under my name, Kate Mitchell, so just, heck, reach out to me, because I love talking about Hokkaido and everything to do with it. Obviously, it's a place that I'm passionate about, that I've shared so much of my life with, so yeah, talk to me about Hokkaido.
And if you have any suggestions for future episodes after we finish up looking at Sinnoh and the other Hokkaido-related areas, let us know, and we can see if we can get some console tours going.